Hello and welcome to this live broadcast from CGTN. My name's Martin Lowe. You're joining us in Bangkok, the capital of Thailand. It's a beautiful sunny day here, and as you can see, we're on the banks of this major river. This is the river which starts in the centre of Thailand, meanders through the capital here in Bangkok, and then carries on all the way to the sea at the Gulf of Thailand. This is the biggest river in this country. It's called the Chao. Phraya. That roughly translates to the River of Kings, and that's very appropriate for us today because we're here to bring you the King's Royal Barge Procession. This is a spectacular celebration that takes place only rarely in this country. It's an event which is reserved for major royal occasions. This time, this is the final event to mark a year of coronation ceremonies for a new king here in Thailand. That's King Maha Vajiralongkorn. When the procession reaches us in just a few minutes, you'll get a clearer view, but perhaps you can already see them coming towards us in the distance. There are 52 royal barges, and they're rowed by just over 2,000 oarsmen taken from the Royal Thai Navy. Now, King Vajiralongkorn actually took the throne in 2016 following the death of his father, King Bhumibol Adulyadej. King Bhumibol had reigned here in Thailand for 70 years. At the time of his passing, he was the longest reigning monarch in the world. Now, the king at the time, the current king, was the crown prince. He clearly succeeded his father following his father's death. But King Bhumibol was held in such love and high regard here in Thailand that the new king decreed that everything should proceed at a slow and a measured and a sedate pace as a mark of respect to his father, the former king. So much so that one whole year of mourning was declared for King Bhumibol. State officials and many members of the population wore black throughout that period, and even after that year of mourning was concluded, things have still moved relatively serenely and sedately. This year, 2009, was designated the year of the coronation and the formal events, and they've been taking place in 3 phases. Phase 1 saw sacred water collected from all 77 provinces across this country in a range of ceremonies and brought to the capital. Phase 2 saw a range of different ceremonies here in the capital, Bangkok, an anointment of the king with that sacred water, and then the actual coronation itself, when the crown was placed upon the king's head. That all happened back in May. And now here we are towards the end of the year in December, and this is the final part of that year-long coronation process. This is a procession of royal barges which will travel along the river for a distance of about 4 kilometers. It will pass a number of notable points. It'll pass a royal pier, it'll pass a number of famous temples, the Temple of the Emerald Buddha, Wat Po, Wat Arun, and it will also pass the Grand Palace, which is the most important of all the royal palaces here in Bangkok. We can probably now zoom our camera in and show you the boats approaching. I'm not sure if they're actually lined up in a stationary formation at the moment. Okay. Yes, it looks as though King Vajiralongkorn is here, and he is being transported from the side of the river to the royal barge upon which he and his queen will travel. The other barges are now holding station against the tide. No mean feat, really. This is a tidal river. It rises and falls with the incoming sea from the Gulf of Thailand, and so there have been a number of rehearsals to allow the sailors to familiarise themselves with the effects of the tide, and this date has been chosen as being particularly suitable conditions to stage this event. Clearly, in terms of the weather, it's clear and it's bright, which allows everyone to get a good view. But for those 2,000 or so Royal Thai Navy sailors whose job it is to hold formation and then when they get underway keep formation, clearly for them having perfect conditions is very helpful. So we'll just take a moment to look around. In the centre of the river in front of us, there are some security boats. These actual vessels are from the Thai Navy, but there are also police boats that have been going up and down the river. And as you can imagine, as for any royal occasion, there is a certain level of security that has to be enforced. Alongside the river itself, you'll see people wearing yellow. That is the designated colour for the king. We can just hear now some of the fanfares being played. So clearly we think the ceremony is now getting underway formally. So along the bank there are thousands of people who have been here for some hours now to make sure that they got a good position from where they would have a view. You can probably see that most of them are wearing yellow, which is a mark of respect for the king. In this country, different colours are used to represent different institutions, but the king's colour is yellow. Many people also have two flags, one a yellow flag for the king and one the red, white and blue flag of Thailand. So this is clearly a day of celebration, and a lot of people have turned out to come and see it. However, this river is only accessible to a certain degree. It can't take hundreds of thousands of spectators. There's only a narrow river walk alongside the river. So we've been told that there are around 10,700 spaces, room for 10,700 people at the various viewing points. I certainly think that all of those viewing places have been taken. This ceremony itself, this royal barge procession, has been a feature of Thai royal events for some 700 years. It's an event steeped in tradition and Thai ceremony, dating right back to the 14th century, what was called here the Sukhothai era. The boats themselves are designed to be a blend of craftsmanship and traditional Thai art. When they get closer, you'll see they're decorated, they're bright colours, they have different symbols, they have usually some sort of figurehead at the front of the boat and also at the rear. Getting noisier now. When the oarsmen get underway, they keep time by the beating of drums and the playing of music. So that's very much part of the event. It clearly makes it more memorable for those of us who are here to witness it, but it also has a practical application in that, as I say, the beating of drums and the type of music chosen helps them keep time and helps them keep their formation in the river. So you can probably see the boats, the barges lined up across the river under that splendid road bridge, the King Rama VIII bridge that crosses the Chao Phraya River here in the centre of Bangkok. That's been closed for the duration of the ceremony, but as you can see, the barges are forming up under the river. They're ready to go. The king himself is now being transported to the centre of this procession, where he will be taken aboard the most famous of the royal barges. We think once it gets underway proper, we think it'll take about 40 minutes for all of these barges to go past the point where we're filming from. The procession itself is a couple of kilometres long, 52 barges in all, including 4 major principal royal barges, and the king and queen will be in we think the second of the 4 principal barges when they come to us. Can we zoom in, Dan, and see what's happening? You can obviously hear, I imagine, the instructions being relayed to those sailors on those barges. We're not quite close enough here to hear exactly what they're saying, but clearly they're making final preparations to get this procession underway. In normal times, this is still very much a working commercial river. At all times there are passenger boats going up and down, both pleasure cruises but also regular commuter boats. Bangkok, like a lot of big capitals, has a number of traffic problems on its roads, and it can be very difficult to cross this city by road. So a lot of people do choose to use river transport. Excuse me. Also, there are various different ferries that go from one side to the other. There are commercial boats a little bit further down. When you go past these bridges, ocean-going ships come up from the Gulf of Thailand and into the docks at Klong Toi here in Bangkok. It's still very much a working port, and goods come here from around the world and are transported again around the world in their place. Today, of course, this section of the river is closed to traffic, to everybody but the royal barges for this major procession. So the river has been kept clear of all of other traffic for the duration of this event. It is taking a little bit longer than we'd expected, but as you can imagine, anything to do with boats and water tends to move at a fairly slow pace until things are completely in order. When the oarsmen get rowing, these craft will move at a much more respectable speed, but we are still waiting for the king to take his place on his royal barge, and to give the signal that he's ready for this procession to proceed. Meanwhile, the boats clearly are drifting a little bit closer to us all the time. That's probably the effects of the tide that we talked about a little bit earlier. So that clearly will help the oarsmen once the procession proper gets underway. They'll be paddling in the same direction that the tide is flowing, so that will make their jobs a little bit easier on what is really quite a hot day today here in Bangkok. It is winter here. Clearly it's a tropical climate here in Thailand, so it's never cold, but we do sometimes have slightly chillier days in the winter, but not today. Today is a bright sunny day, but although that can be a little uncomfortable at times, it does mean that everything is clear, everyone will get a good view, and possibly you can see from some of the flags, at least there is a breeze here on the banks of the river. If it was still, it would be stifling, but luckily for all of us who are here watching, there is a slight breeze off the water, and that's helping everybody who's here waiting for this procession. Also, to help people, there are officials going up and down, and they're giving out water and boiled sweets to try and help everybody stay moist and avoid any dehydration. There are also first aid posts, and because we're so close to the water, there are also some kind of water marshals. So if there are any mishaps and anybody gets too close or indeed falls into the water, that has been catered for. There's all of those eventualities have been catered for in the detailed planning that has taken place for this event. So even though these types of processions, these river barge processions, have been taking place for 700 years, they're far from frequent, and it's many, many years since the last one took place. So I would hazard to say that for all, if not most, of those who are directly involved today, this will be their first time taking part in a river procession, a barge procession like this. Although, as I say, there have been rehearsals throughout the year in an effort to make sure that everything happens as smoothly and as orderly as possible. They're getting closer now. We can start to hear the beating of the drums. Some of the oarsmen are now paddling, so I think we can now say that this event is properly underway at last. It's going now. The barges themselves are actually, it's hard to say at times, but the planning of the procession is that they are 5 abreast. And this is known as the major battle formation. Although this is a ceremonial event, the formation of the boats is based very much on how they were used in ancient times, when they were actually fighting ships. Thai barges used to be warships in the various battles that were taking place hundreds of years ago. And the way that they're lined up is that the outer lines closest to the banks on either side are the fighting ships, and they would mainly have carried the troops who would engage in combat with the enemy. Inside the inner line of barges on either side of the river, they're the royal guards. Their principal task was to protect the leaders and the generals of the armies who were being carried. And then in the center, a single line in the center, Those were the VIP boats, if you like. They were for any royals that happened to be present, but also the most senior officials and generals of the warring armies. That's the battle formation that was used to go into combat, and that formation is being used again today, and it's reflected by the fact that the King and Queen are occupying a barge at the very centre of this procession, just as the leader of the Thai army would have done in times of war. I think for now we can just look and listen as the barges make their way past us. I think you'll see that most of the work is actually being done by the tide. The oarsmen are dipping their paddles into the water, but not too vigorously. I think the tide is carrying the boats along at a very reasonable pace, and the oarsmen are basically steering and keeping the boats in formation. As you can clearly see, everybody is in traditional costume, reflecting the long traditions and the historic nature of this event. Some of these battle costumes that they're wearing date back 600 or 700 years. Everything today is at a serene and a sedate pace because, of course, this is a ceremonial occasion. It's not to be rushed. It's part of the coronation ceremonies for the installation of Thailand's new king. So everything is being done with due reverence and solemnity. But nevertheless, you can clearly see the size of these barges and the number of oarsmen who are on board. You can imagine in days gone by, when these barges were paddled as fast as could be to carry soldiers towards an enemy, back in the 13th, 1400s, it would have been an intimidating sight for a defending army to see a fleet of this nature powering towards them. Most of the ancient conflicts here in Southeast Asia were between neighbouring countries. So waterborne battles took place on rivers rather than at sea. So this would have represented Thailand's battle fleet of the day. Obviously there were ships that went on the sea, which travelled around the Gulf of Thailand, also in the Andaman Sea, but principally it was fighting neighbours, and battles took place on rivers and on the banks of rivers. So this would very much have been the battle fleet of the Thai Navy in days gone by. In fact, in one major war in the 18th century, neighbouring Burma, as it was then, now known as Myanmar, successfully invaded Thailand and captured the capital of the day, which was in not Bangkok, but in those days a place called Ayutthaya. And the Burmese sacked Ayutthaya and they destroyed the entire royal barge fleet. They burned 100 or so barges and reduced them to ashes. The Thai army retreated, but set up an alternative capital, actually on the banks of the Chao Phraya, closer to what is now Bangkok. And they rallied and they rebuilt a new royal barge fleet, and eventually they drove out the Burmese invaders. Just coming into our line of sight now, in the centre of the river is the first of the four principal royal barges. You can probably recognise it by the gold pagoda-like structures on top of the boat. And at the bow, it has a very striking golden design, which I think is representative of a multi-headed snake. As we said, these vessels were designed to put fear into the hearts of the enemy. So we talked about the Burmese who destroyed the royal barge fleet back in the 18th century. When World War II came along, Thailand was forced to form an alliance with Japan after the far superior Japanese army entered and occupied Thailand. The Japanese, of course, wanted Thailand as a jumping-off point to fight the British and the Americans in Burma and elsewhere. But as a result of that alliance with Japan, Bangkok was bombed from the air by both the US and Great Britain. And again, a number of royal barges were destroyed in those air raids. So once more the fleet was rebuilt, but what you're looking at now, the modern fleet, is very much a mixture of old and new vessels. So now the main barge, the principal barge carrying the King and Queen, is coming into view. So this is the most important of the four principal barges. This is now the barge designated to carry the reigning monarch. The barge is named Supanahong. It's very distinctive. On the bow at the front of the barge, you can see a figurehead shaped like a mythical swan. Sometimes this boat is called the Golden Swan. The whole craft is 46 meters long and was carved from a single trunk of teakwood, a teakwood tree. The present king, who's being honoured today, King Maha Vajiralongkorn, also has the title Rama X. He is the 10th king of the Chakri dynasty, which has ruled Thailand for the last few hundred years. This barge that we're looking at, the king's barge, Supanahong, this was actually, construction began in the reign of King Rama V, and was completed in the reign of the following monarch, King Rama VI, and it was launched 108 years ago. So this is 108 years old, which this vessel, which is now the pride of the royal barge fleet. From stem to stern, it's adorned in gold lacquer and glass ornaments. And this barge has been designated not just in Thailand, but as a world maritime heritage vessel, a vessel with global importance. So now the majority of the fleet have reached and passed us by. There are still more barges to come, one more principal barge. Maybe in the foreground you can see some of the security. These are Royal Thai police boats, clearly with a dual function, making sure everybody is safe and okay, but also with a security function. Clearly a very watchful eye is kept whenever a monarch appears in a public location. But with the chanting and the singing and the beating of drums, this is a very spectacular occasion, and it's something that the organisers have tried very, very hard to ensure happens with due majesty, really. Obviously, moving this many barges, this many vessels on water at the same time has the potential for problems, but everything seems to have been performed like clockwork today, and that's something that the people who are involved in the organisation of this event will be extremely thankful for. Certainly we couldn't have had better weather for this type of ceremony. Perfect visibility today. Here is just coming up, the final of the principal barges. All of them, of course, ornate designs, all propelled by teams of oarsmen in the traditional way. Now closer to us, another barge manned by oarsmen in white. All of the different colours have a significance, But as I said, these in ancient times would have been the fighting boats on the outside of the procession. The boats nearest the two banks carried the fighting soldiers whose job it was to take the battle to the enemy. Inside them, more fighting soldiers, but also with a dual responsibility to take care of the senior officers and a royal, if he happened to be present. And of course the leader of the army, in our case today the king of the nation, riding in the very centre of the procession on the principal royal barge. Now the final two barges of the procession approaching our position, and as they glide past, they'll carry on down the river in the direction of the sea, disappearing really into the sunset as the sun lowers. As the boats pass us by, they go into silhouette. So there we have it, an impressive, spectacular display, 52 barges in lines of 5 abreast, starting from above the bridge that we showed you at the beginning of the broadcast, now making their way into the sunset and through another bridge which we've probably already lost in the setting sun, as well as being a spectacular celebration. This ceremony has a very formal obligation. According to ancient tradition, the coronation of the new king is not complete until the royal barge procession has taken place. So, as well as this being a very public occasion and an opportunity for ordinary members of the public to come out and see the king as he glides by in the royal barge, and to, if you like, revel in the majesty of the occasion and the colour and the splendour and the tradition and the history of everything that we've seen today. It also has an official part to play in that long coronation process, which in this case has taken just about the whole of the year. And the barges will carry on downstream for a short distance until a point where they bring the king and queen to the shore. The king and queen will then transfer to a royal motorcade, and the whole ceremony is designed to see them complete a clockwise circulation of the city of Bangkok. But the most important and the most majestic and spectacular part of the whole occasion, of course, has been this royal barge procession. So, I think that's it. We've lost the barges. They've passed this location. They've disappeared into the sunset. They've taken with them the good wishes of the thousands of people who've turned out to see this momentous occasion. Clearly, as we said, as well as being spectacular, it had that official role as being, if you like, the crowning ceremony of a year of coronation events. So very spectacular, slightly delayed start, but we hope you bore with us and were able to witness that with us. That's the end of this broadcast here from Bangkok. Thank you for joining us, and please join us again next time. For now, bye-bye.